Sure. I know it's got the little red dot, but I want to make sure because I am a little OCD. Okay, good. Okay, so for those of you joining on Zoom, greetings. Those of you joining in class, hello. Today is, well, today's today. Let's see, who do we have here? Adam, and I already got Riley, Noah. We've got Ryan back in the nosebleed seats, and we've got Miss Natalie up here in the front row. And Logan. Was he the Logan? I have two Logans, and one of them is at a baseball game. Okay, this Logan. Okay. We'll wait a few minutes to finish that. Let's see. Any announcements? Okay, so Pangram update. Without going into great detail, I want you to be vigilant because when I do grading, let's see, next week's grading, I'm still giving basically a pass on everything. Last week's grading, I live in a weird time zone. I'm grading for last week, later this week. I'm teaching this week, and I'm thinking about grading for next week. So I'm in a weird place on my calendar in my head. So the work you do this week, make sure that if you use AI for anything that is AI related, that you include that in the references because I will be grading more stringently on that. But not, I'd rather have the conversation. I'd rather be talking about how to properly do this rather than just slapping deductions of points on you and not dealing with it. I'd rather use this as a learning opportunity. As some of you know, I do go to bat for my students, and I have been on the Pangram issues, and I will continue to do so as needed. I was up last night doing a qualitative scientific analysis of things to try to figure out what was going on, and instead of getting sleep. So I try to be dedicated to my students. I want you to know I do take this seriously. Today we need to put this over here because I will drop it if it's over there. There we go. Today we are going to get going with the dual computers again, and off we go. It says week 11. Don't trust that. It's not week 11. It's week 5. I had to move slides around from a 16-week course down to an 8-week course, and things always get a little bit mixed up in there. So let's, come on. We're going to talk about changes to the workplace today. So this week we're talking a lot about things that happen in the workplace, the changes, where we've been, where we're going, stuff like that. And I think you're going to learn some interesting things that we've done in the past and that are resurfacing in today's business culture. During the Industrial Revolution, machines took over the competitive advantage that the farmers once held. Okay, so farming was very pre-industrial, there was two industrial revolutions. The first one, before that one, everybody bought locally. Everybody basically had a farmer's market. If you lived in a town, it was a small town. You had your farmers that you go get your produce from. You had your farm, other types of farm where you go get your meat from, hog or cattle or whatever, chicken. Same thing with dairy products. You had dairy farms, and people would go to these farmers and buy their stuff. It was a very local niche type of economy. Once the Industrial Revolution comes into place, and that was really powered literally by steam engines, you see the small farms, the family businesses not being so prevalent anymore. Now you start having larger farms and you have farming equipment that is able to do much more work. And so it requires less labor. So we had to come up with this idea of grocery stores. And so grocery stores are really because of the Industrial Revolution. Railroads, as you remember, and you too from OPM 2000, railroads came about because of that. This is just back stuff. This isn't necessarily stuff that you're going to be using in your homework, but just not knowledge for you to have. If it wasn't for the Industrial Revolution, we wouldn't have built the big railroad system across America. That allowed for businesses now to get their products from one coast to the other coast, to have major production manufacturing hubs As we all know, Detroit with the automotive industry became a hub of that for quite a number of years. So you got hubs that are sending out produce, hubs that are sending out sewing machines, hubs that are sending out this and that, and people in these other places are now able to get it. So the railroad is being put out. What about the places that didn't have the railroad? Well, they had the stagecoach. They had the Pony Express for mail, and they had the stagecoach system. So let's say that you want to buy a sewing machine or a new six-shooter revolver. Well, you go to the local store, you look in their catalog, you fill out a little thing, you write, you put your money in there, send it out, and you'd wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. It was a mail order system. And then it would come to you. It'd be sent through the railroad. Then the railroad would put it onto a stagecoach and finally get to Tombstone, Arizona, or something like that. So it was, you were able to get stuff, and it was faster than sending a ship from the Port of New York all the way down the Horn of South America up to San Diego, and then bring it over that way. So it was a lot quicker, but still it took time. And so this led to things like Sears and J.C. Penney's. Sears got its start in a catalog business. They were a catalog company. And they held on to that catalog for all these generations, basically. And they refused to let it go. The internet comes in, companies that started doing e-commerce were actually succeeding. Sears didn't get onto the internet. They waited, they procrastinated. They said, no, we trust our catalog. Plus, we got stores in every mall. That's our business model. We're not going to change. They didn't keep up with the innovation. So what happens? Sears tanks as a company. Just totally just tanks. They're still around, but just a mere fraction of what they used to be from last I saw. They didn't get online. They didn't stay with the innovation. So Industrial Revolution brings innovations. People got onto it. Now, one thing about innovation, it does displace competitive advantage. Innovation took the local farmers. They took that family sort of generational, my dad was a farmer, I'm a farmer, my kids are going to be farmers. That sort of mentality. My dad was a blacksmith, I'm a blacksmith, my kid's going to be a blacksmith. They took that away and they brought in actual like businesses. We're able to manufacture and make and do all these things in higher volumes. And that's only progressed to the point where we are today, where now, basically, if you want a farmer's market, you got to figure out where one's at to find out if we're going to get local produce. To buy local is sometimes a challenge, depending on what you're looking for. So that competitive advantage shifted from the individual families and farmers and the artisans to businesses. Now, usually with a shift in competitive advantage, we tend to think, oh my goodness, it's such a huge change. Why can't we have it the way it used to be? Well, it's not that way anymore. It's not going to be that way anymore. And competitive advantage shifts. We will have a competitive advantage for a while. Innovation will change. That competitive advantage will move. Now, guess what we get to do? We get to find a new competitive advantage. So staying with manufacturing, World War II happens. The United States puts out almost all the armaments for the Second World War. Okay. We had the manufacturing capacity because of the two industrial revolutions. We put out all this equipment. The war ends. They convert it into building massive amounts of cars. Okay. At the end of World War II, we also defeated Japan. Okay. Now, the thing about that is, we then put General MacArthur over there to try to rebuild the country, kind of rebuild them in our image, which I don't always agree with. But in this case, we brought manufacturing over there in a greater, really, it helped build up their manufacturing system. They took these ideas and they came up with ideas such as the Toyota production system, TPS. And through TPS, we get lean manufacturing now. Motorola actually developed Six Sigma, and that was also over in the Asian area. And so we see the competitive advantage for manufacturing in certain areas like that, developing more in that area in Asia, and we lost a lot of it in the United States. Well, in the 70s, we come into our own as far as finance. And that's what's been the United States' main competitive advantage for the last, 5 decades? And it's been a finance system based on fiat currency. Fiat is a Latin word. It means let it be. Poof, it's money. Before 1971, money was tied to precious metal here in the United States. Silver, gold, stuff like that. Nixon removed that entire system. Now, the system had been breaking down ever since the early 1900s, but it had still remained at least a significant portion of where we got our value for our dollar from. And we came up with this idea of the petrodollar. We hear a lot about that in the news nowadays, I'm sure. The petrodollar is this whole idea that Saudi Arabia agreed to sell all of its oil in American currency, which means anybody who wanted to buy oil had to have American currency. So they would invest into our dollar to be able to have the dollars to buy the petrol. Okay. Now, that was a system that allowed us to make a lot of money as a country and built up our financial system even more. And there are some people saying that now that there's a change in that, and that competitive advantage might be shifting. Well, competitive advantage is never permanent. I wouldn't expect it to be. It's always fluctuating. And it can be catastrophic at times. We feel like we're losing our ability to succeed as a people. No, we have other things. We can continue excelling with in healthcare and in other forms of technology or space exploration. So there's many ways we can go to with it. This right here, these changes to the workplace always seem to stem from this change in competitive advantage. So we have innovation, new technologies, competitive advantage shifts, and now we see changes in the workplace. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So what took the place of the machines industrial revolution, and today, if we're using the industrial revolution as an analogy for today, well, computers, 3D printing, social media apps, remote working, these are new concepts that have come into the business world, into our workspaces, and have changed how we actually engage in I didn't have my face showing. Huh. I forgot a button. Change how we actually work. It wasn't very long ago when the idea of remote working was a foreign idea. Computers. I remember a time period where most homes did not have a computer. No one carried around a computer in their pocket. This phone does more than my first computer could even have dreamt of doing. My first computer was a Commodore 64. That's 64K. Okay. Your watch probably has more power than that. My Apple Watch sure does. And so we've grown. Our technology, our innovations have led us to a place where we can do more with less. And so businesses have had to adapt. Byers and Stanbury, seriously? Byers and Stanbury pointed out that telecommuting has increased in popularity since the 1970s. So that is working remotely. That's a fancy word for remote working. Technologies such as the internet and better personal computers made this a viable solution for many workers and employers. Organizational internet has facilitated this shift. I mean, here at Clear University, every single one of us has access to the system here, and that's an intranet, okay, through the internet. So the internet is the entire World Wide Web. The intranet is this facility, its access point into that, and the things that we all do here through Canvas and through different things like that, the infrastructure that we all can do our stuff through and our emails and things like that. So now businesses develop these infrastructures, these intranets for their employees. In the United States, around 4 million employees telecommute. That is as of 2018. I'm sure that has increased, especially through the pandemic. Remote working shot up during the pandemic, and a lot of businesses have retained that change in telecommuting. This right here shows the percentage of employers offering telework options. So in the United States, 90%. And I do need to point out that this is as of 2014. This is what's in the textbook, so it is a little outdated. I would expect these numbers to be slightly different now. Maybe not that different, but some difference. China is at 85%, India is 77%, UK is at 72%, France 71%, and of course Germany's at 71% also. Online meetings. We have those. Well, I'm having one right now. We have these for the entire class every Wednesday. It's this idea of Zoom meetings. Well, that's an online meeting. There's, of course, FaceTime, Skype, or Zoom like we use. And this has allowed functional teams to be located around the globe. So now we could actually put together a work team and none of us be in the same country or let alone the same time zone, let alone the same continent. And we have this ability now to have a greater access to a greater pool of potential employees. This has been used as a recruitment tool when hiring candidates. Smartphone technology has also contributed to this change through better text messaging, email features, and apps permitting video conferencing. I don't know if you know this, but when cell phones first came out, and text messages started becoming popular, there's one region of the world that really grabbed on to the idea of the SMS text messaging and became known as the global capital for SMS messaging. That was the Philippines. To this day, they still, in their business structure, in the business work they do, they still rely a lot on text messages, more so than any other place in the world. Now, there's a good side to that. One is we have a greater ability now to reach people with text messages. But when you study communication and communication skills, you learn that direct face-to-face is the best because we can actually read body language. And I want to say it's about roughly what, 60, it's around 60% of the communicative content is in nonverbal communication. So facial expressions, body posturing, you don't get that in things like a memo. But in a memo, you can actually write more. In email, we lose some also, but we can write more. We can be more descriptive. In a text message, you're not using very many characters. And so you're really missing out. Now we got, emojis. Emojis can be misinterpreted. They're nothing to rely on, especially in the business world. So business through text messaging, I'm very leery of. But the Philippines, they have taken that and they've grafted that into a permanent part of their business culture. If it works for them, it works. Just because I may not recommend using it doesn't mean it's not going to be successful for other people. Benefits of telecommuting. The textbook noted that both employers and employees benefit from this modern approach. So let's look at some organizational benefits. You have a larger talent pool. And that is a typo. Beneficial during the pandemic, fewer sick days for employees, more productive employees, low cost expansion, and local staff. Okay, so here, let's say we have an employee and he or she has a family and daycare suddenly isn't an option that day. Well, if we've got a remote working option, they can remote in the work that day. They're not missing out on their job. They're not missing out on earning the money. And we're not losing that employee their productivity for that day. So this is very beneficial. And some companies, they offer this as a perk. So, okay, you have a family. Okay, well, we do offer remote. You can remote in if situations and come up and stuff like that. So they make these accommodations. Fewer sick days. If you know that you're not necessarily feeling the greatest that day, or you got some sort of medical issue, you may be able to talk to your boss and be able to remote in that day. So you're not feeling the greatest. You wouldn't really want to be in the office, but you can still remote in. We're not losing that productivity. Low cost expansion. Now that's a neat thing because if we want to grow as a company, we're going to have to increase our office space or our workspace, whatever it is we have, right? But with remote work, we don't have to do any additions to our actual facility. It's not going to cost us more in utilities. We're not going to have to build more structures. We don't need more people coming in. We can hire them and have them remote in, and we have their productivity. We grow as a company without some of the expenses that often come with that. Now, employee benefits, less fuel expense, obvious reasons, more flexibility. So if you've got a position that you show up and you have the option to remote in and you can stay home with the kids on a couple days of the week and remote in, you can do this. And it's better sometimes to have these options. Employees like that. More flexibility, less anxiety and stress due to traffic. No need to plan for long commutes. Environmental benefits, less pollution, reduced oil dependency. Issues with telecommuting, because nothing is going to have solely benefits. Everything's got the positives and the negatives. The authors discuss the problems associated with remote working, and these include less face-to-face collaboration. Now, I'm a big fan and proponent of face-to-face collaboration. Collaboration is best when employees can contribute face to face. Once again, there's this connection that occurs. You see each other, you can read the body language. The communication is more robust. Difficulty in establishing and maintaining corporate culture. If our business has most of its employees scattered around the world and we all remote in, our culture is going to represent that. It's a virtual type of structure, organizational structure, and our culture is going to show that. So if we want to build up a really solid, really robust corporate culture, we really need people in the office. It is really difficult to get people together for a birthday celebrations or to everybody bring in, a potluck sort of thing if you're all in remote work. If that's just not going to work. So I'm not going to be able to try somebody's food from another country. I'm not going to be able to interact with them and learn about their culture. I'm going to be almost in a way, I'm exposed to their culture through the remote work, but I'm not really immersed in it in ways in the office. And so I think we lose some of that there. There are also problems monitoring the work. So you remote in, if you're supposed to work between this hour and this hour, sometimes if it's remote work, you just have to, let's say you're writing reports and you clock in, but you're not at your computer working. You don't do the work till later that night. It's hard really to make sure the work is done properly and on time. So it's really more difficult to monitor. Privacy concerns. If you remote in, you've got that camera. If you've got kids and stuff running around in the background or whatever, everyone's going to see that. So we can put up those, I don't know what they're called, backgrounds, I guess, and they're virtual backgrounds, but for me, they're so irritating because when somebody's talking and they move, all I'm seeing is that flickering thing around their head and their body. And they go like this, and suddenly you see their entire wall and they put the arm down and it's back to being like the beach again. So it's really kind of strange. And I think that's kind of irritating. That's just me personally. Difficulty connecting with clients and customers. And in the medical field, that's especially with patients. Now, there is telehealth where you can be seen by a doctor or a physician's assistant virtually, but they can only treat certain things. They can't do a full exam. They can't run lab tests then. They can't, you got a broken arm, you're going to have to go in. They can't treat everything. You're not going to get cancer therapy telehealth. It's really basic. So there is a limitation there. Security concerns from law enforcement staff. If you've got law enforcement staff and they have to remote in, now you might be dealing with private information, confidential information. Same thing with the military or with the intelligence community. There's certain things when I was in the Army in military intelligence, I wouldn't have been able to put onto a remote system. Okay, so you're really limited. So there are security concerns there. Research has indicated that the most significant factor is managerial bias. If managers are older like me, they may be less inclined to agree to have remote working as an option for their employees. Because sometimes when humans get older, we get stuck in our ways and we want things the way they've always been. We don't like change. So we resist it. And you see that a lot with some older people, not all. I'm very open to things that come along. And some people in their 80s are very open to technology. Others are very closed to it. So your manager might be biased against it. Some ethical challenges. Byers Stanbury pointed out that trust is difficult to cultivate in a remote setting. Trust is really, it's hard to develop, and sometimes it's hard to maintain. And it takes really knowing how the other person's going to respond, react, if they are worthy of your trust. And as humans, like I said, we go back to that nonverbal communication. If someone's sitting there and their arms are crossed, that's an aggressive stance, 9 times out of 10. Did you know that your feet tell you if you want to be in a conversation or not with somebody? If your feet are pointed towards the door, subconsciously, you don't want to be in that conversation. Now, obviously, I'm up here teaching, my feet might be at the door. I don't want to leave. But if we're talking and I position myself so my feet are facing towards the door, that's the direction I subconsciously want to go. Now, you may not realize that until I tell you now, but you're going to pick up on that cue, your subconscious is going to pick up on that nonverbal cue. Now you're going to think, why does he want to leave? And you may not be open to trusting me. You may not divulge what you need to me. You may not feel that I'm paying enough attention to you. Eye contact. If I look at you too much, that's creepy. But if I don't look at you at all, I'm aloof. So we read this. This is a form of language that you learned ever since you were a little child. And this helps develop trust. And in a remote setting, we don't have access to this. We use very limited nonverbal communication that can be transferred through this tiny little screen. Some gets through, but most doesn't. 2, the position should be categorized as being suitable for remote work instead of permitting it on a case-by-case basis. I said that right. So some jobs are not really good for remote work. A detective would be one. An infantryman in the Army. Doctors who deal with fractures and cancer and things that they've got to actually see the patient for and do their exams. There are occupations where remote working just is not feasible. Codes of conduct need to reflect the organization's expectations for remote employees. Every group has informal codes and formal codes. The formal code you're going to have in a code of conduct. We have that here. The students have a handbook. So do faculty. There's a formal code of conduct. Now, in this classroom, over the last few weeks, we've actually established an informal code of conduct as well. There is an unspoken, unwritten, just way that we do things in this classroom. They may be slightly unique from other classrooms. That's our own informal code. And in remote work, these are difficult, really, A, to develop and B, to maintain. Now, you can have a formal code, but how are you going to maintain it? Okay, you have to be dressed a certain way. Well, in a remote call, you literally could be wearing pajamas and a dress shirt. So you can't really enforce the code of conduct. Okay, so we have to consider all this when we think about remote work. Ethical challenges here. The delicate factors surrounding employee motivation and an effective work-life balance are critical for leaders in their decision to move work to a remote setting. So I don't know about you, but getting out of the house motivates me. Whether it's going to the gym or coming here to teach a class, there's something that I feel energized about. Okay. Now I have a treadmill in my home. And I use it on Mondays and Wednesdays because I don't have a lot of time to go to the gym. So I run back home between my classes and I exercise a bit. Then I come right back over here. On the other days, I like to go to the gym because I actually feel like I'm getting out. It encourages me to work out. It encourages me to not necessarily talk to other people, but just be around other people. Well, the same thing is true in work. It can become very monotonous to live and work and sleep all in the same place. Mentally, there's no break. So motivation does decline. Work-life balance. If you remote to work and you're doing this right from your home, what happens when you clock out for the day and you remember there was a project that you had to do something for? You get back on the computer and you do it. You don't give yourself a break. You're less likely to go ahead and give yourself some downtime. Organizations must effectively train remote workers to facilitate better communication, time management, and security issues, such as dealing with organizational information, confidential information, or the customer's private information. So now, if you're remoting in the work and you're dealing with a client list is confidential. This isn't something you should make accessible to everybody in your home, your house, your apartment building, Starbucks, wherever you're sitting remoting in from. But if you have it open in your computer and you're in a Starbucks, other people can see your client list. Now, this information, if they're unscrupulous and they take a picture or whatever they do, now they can start contacting these clients. How did you get my information? Now there was a data breach somewhere. It wasn't an actual data breach, but really it was, wasn't it? You had the information in your computer, someone had access to see it. So we have to be careful with that. We got to protect our proprietary information as a company and our customers and clients. The traditional approach to workplaces that textbook noted the common approach to designing workspace has been to create an atmosphere conducive to productivity. The modern workplace is designed with ergonomics in mind. Ergonomics is the function of the human body, the form and function. A mouse has this shape not because it's cool, but because the human hand at rest makes that shape. Pay attention to what your body does when you rest, how it's positioned. That's ergonomics. Now look at how you move and walk and lift things and do stuff. That's ergonomics. So we need to make our workspaces in a way that correlate to the human form and function. When we don't go with that form and function, we cause problems like carpal tunnel syndrome. We cause health problems, back problems, increased anxiety, stress. And so by taking ergonomics in mind, we can reduce those. Internal mobility has also been a factor. Can employees move around the facility for meetings with the equipment they require? So if I need a computer, a tablet, and a printer to do my work, and we need to go to a meeting and I need to bring all this with me, it makes it difficult. So now, are we going to make it so a tablet alone works? Is there a printer provided near the conference room? What do we require our people to have so that they can work either online with what they're doing or what the equipment is that they have to use? Are we taking that into consideration? Or are we making people now pack up all this stuff, put it into a bag, bring it with them just to have a meeting? These are things we literally have to think about when we design how our organization is going to function. The workplace as a campus. Here, you are very familiar with the idea of a campus. We are on one at the moment. This is a campus. In case you didn't know, this is a college campus. Okay? This is not a military base. This is not a Walmart. There's one over there. But this is a campus. Now, I want you to pay attention to that for a very specific reason. Because campuses have been and are becoming a thing in corporate culture yet once again. A workplace campus is created as similarly to how a college campus is set up. Some organizations have been constructing apartments either on the campus or nearby. There's a resort in Austin, Texas, in Round Rock, actually, just north of Austin. And Kalahari, I think was the name of the place. Really, I never went there, but really fairly new and really fancy. I drove Uber for a while, and I picked up some people that lived in these odd little apartments near the Kalahari Resort. Come to find out, they were international people who worked here, and the company had these apartments for them to live in. That is a campus atmosphere. So some companies even included on-site cafeteria so that their staff can eat. And when I was at Samsung, there was a cafeteria on site. So these are amenities that companies have offered through the years. Now, another thing they've done, and we're going to get to it in a minute, but I'm going to spill the beans, is a company town. Imagine Clear University, the campus, is one company, but this is the size of a town. We have health clinics. We have grocery stores. We've got daycare. We've got elementary, junior, and high school. Okay. But this is all for our employees and the employees' families. Now, the good thing is you don't have to commute to work. But there's a downside. I'm the CEO. I can look at all the files and everything on this base. You take your kid to the hospital or the clinic, I can see those records. You'll lose your privacy. And let's say we don't want our employees to smoke, but you're living on campus, you're not driving anywhere, and you smoke. We're going to know it. You're going to be surveilled. The people are going to know what you're up to. And if you don't conform to our standards, you're going to be disciplined and or eventually terminated. So a company town, this is not a new idea. This goes all the way back decades ago, where you would have nowadays, there's a literal town, and you'll find them in Pennsylvania and all these places. And it's a town just like any other, but you go and find out how it was founded. It was a company town. There's one just outside Chicago. It was a company town. The company bought the property, built everything up, had their people living there, and they ran it. They were the governor of that town, the mayor of that town. And eventually, the company wasn't able to sustain that anymore, and the town became a literal, actual town where they voted in their mayor. But when you're a company town, you're not voting. The CEO is the mayor of that town. Historically, many companies, okay, we talked about that. I told you it was coming up. So, like I said, all the amenities they were owned by the company. Now we also increase our profit because we own the grocery store. We pay Riley a salary. Riley takes part of that salary. She goes to the grocery store and buys groceries. Well, we own the grocery store. Any profit that's made at the grocery store, we get. So really, a company town wasn't necessarily just to keep the people close and make it easier for them. It was really to maximize our profit. Also, it aided in really facilitating our ability to control our employees. We actually, in company towns, there was a squashing of that work-life balance. Now, if we had a project happening and there was some situation, we could call you and you're right over there. Come over here. No work-life balance. You don't get away from work and like, nah, I can't come in. I'm an hour away. I can't make it in. We'll have to deal with it tomorrow. No, you're right over there. You're coming in now. Now there's an opportunity for your employer to actually abuse their employees, overwork them. Oh, and you're not getting paid. You're just going to run over here real quick. Just answer a question or two. 3 hours later, you're done. You're not getting paid for it. If you think about it, a military ship, I was on an aircraft carrier. 5,000 people on the aircraft carrier I was on when we were deployed. We had stores, we had cafeterias, we had gyms, we had everything we needed right there. It was kind of like a company town. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of invasion of privacy. I mean, it wasn't a bad experience. I mean, I enjoyed my time in the carrier, but if I was a civilian, I wouldn't think that would be a cool thing to do. But companies are doing this. You look at Silicon Valley. If you type in company campuses, company towns, modern company towns, some of these tech companies are developing these company towns. And yeah, they're beautiful, they're nice, and it might be okay for a while, but when you realize the invasion of privacy that happens, you might not think it's such a great idea. How can I have privacy in that environment? You and your spouse or significant other get into a fight. Your boss knows about it. This model declined due to affordable automobiles. So now people had automobiles, they could actually commute to work. They didn't need the company town. So company towns, they were there, reduced the transportation issue. Now we got automobiles. Why have a company town? As seen on the previous slide, there is a move to an updated approach to the company town model as larger organizations begin to develop workplace campuses with hounding. That's another typo. We'll try housing. That's better. Housing. So like I said, tech firms are doing that quite a bit, you see. The ever elusive work-life balance. The authors noted that 25% of American employees have increased stress due to trying to manage work and home responsibilities. A lack of work-life balance can lead to physical and mental health issues. The return to company town models through the expanded workplace campus is an attempt to reduce some of these factors. So you see, there's a positive side to it. There really is. But we have to understand there's always a negative side. Am I willing to accept the consequences of the negative side just to have the benefits of the positive things? If I am, then that's a decision I get to make. But if a company is going to mandate that I, as their employee, must live in this company town, and I have no say into thinking, do I want to or do I not want to? Now we have a problem. I think if it was made optional and we could actually logically think through this, talk to our significant others and say, is this something you would be willing to do? It would save money. We would lose certain things, but we would gain others. And if you decide that's great, then I don't have a problem with it. But if you think, no, I want to keep a distance. I like the ability to go home and I'm home. I live in New Hudson, not because I don't like my students. I think my students are great, but it's so that I can actually go to the gym and I'm not very likely to run into a student from Clear University. just because it's nice to have some downtime. Otherwise, Howie might see me at the gym and I'm on the treadmill or whatever I'm on, and he wants to come over and ask me about homework assignments. And I'm working after hours now when I was supposed to be out just relaxing and exercising. So I like that work-life balance. Now, as Howie very well knows, he can email me and I respond pretty quick. And so I do allow some breakdown in my work-life balance to accommodate issues that arise and stuff like that. That's not a problem. But I just like being able to not be living where I work. I've done that in the military. It was okay for a time, but it's not what I want to do the rest of my life. Um, Moving on. However, this does create a situation where the employee is now available to work unreasonably long hours since their needs and housing are being met by the company. So you see, the employee can have this feeling of, I owe the company. They're providing all this and the compensation package. So if they call me, I should run across the courtyard and go answer the problem or situation, whatever that's going on. I feel this duty of loyalty that doesn't truly exist. Because when the employee is on their off hours, they should be on their off hours. When I was on the aircraft carrier and I was on my off time, generally I was off. If I was on duty and on my quote unquote off hours and there was an emergency, I'm the guy that ran across the ship taking care of it. I was on duty for that. I expected it. When I wasn't on duty, you don't expect that unless it's, you're being attacked or something like that. So I was able to still have some personal time in that environment. But if a company sets things up in a way that there isn't that clear distinction of this is our after hours group, and it changes out in these certain days, and it's not something you're doing every single day, then you're going to cause a problem in people's work-life balance. Ethics. The ethics of the workplace campus approach. The authors brought up several ethical concerns. Will organizational leaders or managers become city officials? Well, by default, they do. You see these campuses, by default, the CEO or the leaders become the mayor or whatever, the police. Some of these will even have fire departments. And they employ doctors and firemen and all these people to work in these places on the campus, but they're owned and governed by the company. How will these campuses function within the actual city they are a part of? Yes. Do they have housing for employees? But is that like a permanent situation or a temporary, like a 3 months there and then you're gone? It's kind of a modified version. It'd be kind of a modified version. If you're there for a long term, like you got a 2-year agreement or something, then yeah, it would be a company town. But if you're going there to work seasonally and it's just provided for seasonal staff, it'd be a form of a company town, but not the full model. Does that answer your question? Mia. What about zoning? So let's say we a tech company. Ryan and I, we started a tech company, and we call it L&G Technologies. Okay, we decided to have a company town. We actually build it inside of Howell. There's some property we're able to get. It's inside of Howell, and we start developing this company campus. It's almost like a company town, but we call it a campus. Do you realize zoning issues become a huge problem? Fire zoning, building permits. Because now we're almost our own little town. Do we got to get approval from the city? Who do we go to for zoning? Where do we determine the fire hydrants, how they should be placed? Do we follow what the city says we should do? Or are we coming up with our own ideas? What about laws regarding pets? Or access for disabled people? Really, it comes an area where we have to ethically stop and ask, whose rules are we following? Are we following Ryan's and mine or Hal's? This has become a problem with some of these models. It has to be considered. We have to address it. think I got some clips I want to show you. I'm gonna have to pull them out here. So on Wednesday after, well, I'm gonna see if I have these clips. If I do, I'll show you some of these. I think I still do. Um, we will continue this discussion. I think it's interesting to look and see where business is going and what it's going to look like. Because I tell you, it's not going to look like it does now. It's not going to look like it has looked. It will evolve. What happens when we actually become spacefaring, if we make it that far and survive to that point? Things are going to be different. It could look a lot more like Star Trek. We don't know. And it's kind of exciting. That's what futurists do. And I tend to be a little bit of a futurist. I like to think about what would things look like if we did adopt certain changes. You realize in something like Star Trek, wrong one. Star Wars is a fascist regime. Star Trek is almost this idea of utopia to some degree, that people from all planets get along. They don't have to have a monetary system, that they're a post needs, post consumption society. You have the replicators. If I need something, I just replicate it. I don't have to go pay for it. And what would it be like to live in that type of situation? But we also have to ask, if Howie and I invented a replicator, odds are we're going to want to make money off of it, which means we're not going to make it open for everybody. Therefore, if somebody does invent a replicator, we're not going to become a post-consumption society. It's going to be another thing controlled by the wealthy. And that's one of the main problems with the idea of us getting to a place of utopia as a species, because we always have this propensity, this bias towards greed and selfishness. And some people are better at overcoming it, and others are not so good at overcoming it. And all it takes is one person and literally would ruin the entire utopia for everyone. I was in a philosophical debate with a colleague about this a couple months ago. And basically we came to the conclusion that it probably wouldn't happen, because it just takes one person to decide they want to make money off of something that should be free for everyone. And the entire system would collapse. I don't know what I just did. Give me a second here. Okay, I clicked the wrong button and wound up on a screen I never saw before in my life. key playlist. Find Phil. Philosophy 4900. Nope, stop. Don't want Gemini. I want my videos. Here we go. I've got 3 videos for you. It'll be about 17 minutes total. And I want to, do we have time? Yeah, we can knock that out real quick. When corporate Riley, did you bring the popcorn for the movies?
Corporations built cities, the rise and fall of American company towns. Imagine a place where your employer owns your home, your grocery store, your entertainment venues, and even your local government. This was the reality of company towns.
Shoot.
Corporate built.
Okay, for those on Zoom, you're gonna have to watch these. I'll have to post them on the announcement page. I forgot what it was called. Because I'm bouncing between 2 computers, so I can't show the videos on the same computer I'm doing Zoom on. So I will post these on Zoom. So for that, I will let the Zoom guys and gals go. Let me go ahead and close this out, and I will post them on the announcement page.